What if I told you that the way you walk down the street could reveal whether you've trained in ballet and even predict something about your long-term mobility? Today, we're diving into research that looks at how ballet training changes the biomechanics of walking, from speed and stride length to the forces your body generates with every step. And the results might surprise you, especially when it comes to aging, balance, and fall risk. Let's start with a simple question. Why would we study walking in ballet dancers? We already know that ballet improves strength, balance, coordination, and postural control. But a lot of ballet research focuses on dance-specific movements like pirouettes, jumps, and point work. What about something more universal, like walking? Walking is one of the most common daily activities we perform. It's a major predictor of overall health, and it's closely linked to fall risk in older adults. In fact, gait speed or walking speed is sometimes called the sixth vital sign. In older adults, slower walking speed is associated with an increased fall risk, cognitive decline, and even a higher mortality risk. So if ballet truly enhances neuromuscular control and balance, does that show up in how people walk? And maybe even more interesting, does ballet change how the body generates and controls forces during walking? And that's exactly what this study set out to investigate. So who did we actually study? We included 60 participants and divided them into 4 groups: young professional ballet dancers, young non-dancers, older recreational ballet dancers, and older non-dancers. The young dancers were full-time professionals training at least 4 days per week, and the older dancers were recreational participants who had been taking at least 1 ballet class per week for a minimum of 3 months, though many of them had many years of experience. All of the participants were healthy, physically active adults without any neurological conditions or major musculoskeletal disorders. So we were really looking at how age and ballet experience influence walking in otherwise healthy people. So what did we actually measure? Participants walked at their natural, comfortable speed along a 10-meter walkway in our lab. While they walked, we collected full-body 3D motion capture data using reflective markers placed on their bodies and multiple motion capture cameras positioned around the lab. We also measured ground reaction forces using force plates embedded into the floor, which allowed us to see exactly how they were interacting with the ground. From there, we analyzed several things. First, gait speed, which was simply how fast they walked. Then 3 spatiotemporal measures: step length, step width, and cadence, which is the steps per minute. We also calculated dynamic gait stability using something called the Feasible Stability Region, or FSR framework, which quantifies the relationship between the center of mass and the base of support. And finally, we examined 4 kinetic measures: peak vertical ground reaction force, rate of loading, peak propulsive force, and propulsive impulse. So we weren't just looking at how they moved, we were also looking at how they generated and controlled force against the ground. Now, what is dynamic gait stability? Let's simplify this a little bit. Dynamic stability during walking really comes down to the relationship between your center of mass, or basically where your body weight is centered, and your base of support, which is the area where your foot or feet are in contact with the ground. In this study, we looked at where the center of mass was positioned relative to the foot and how fast it was moving. Using the Feasible Stability Region, or FSR framework, we can determine whether someone is operating within a kind of safe zone of balance, meaning they can maintain stability without having to take an extra step or change their base of support to avoid falling. In simple terms, we're asking, are you moving in a way that keeps you balanced while you walk? All right, so what did we find? Let's walk through the major findings. Number 1, dancers walked faster. Across ages, dancers walked significantly faster than non-dancers, and this wasn't just true for the young professionals. Older recreational dancers also walked faster than their age-matched non-dancer counterparts. That's especially important because in older adults, faster gait speed is associated with lower fall risk, better overall health, and greater functional independence. In other words, walking speed isn't just about moving quickly, it's closely tied to how well someone is functioning and aging. Number 2, dancers took longer steps. Dancers also had longer step lengths than non dancers. Interestingly, their cadence, meaning their steps taken per minute, was not significantly higher. So, their faster walking speed wasn't because they were taking more steps, it was because they were taking longer ones. And when you think about ballet training, that actually makes a lot of sense. Ballet emphasizes hip extension, pelvic rotation, leading with the big toe, and full leg extension through the stance phase, all of which naturally contribute to longer strides. So, what we're seeing in walking may reflect movement patterns that are reinforced every day in the studio. Number 3, age differences in step width and cadence. We also saw some clear age related differences. Younger participants tended to walk with narrower step widths and a lower cadence, while older participants took wider steps and had a slightly higher cadence. Taking wider steps in older adulthood is often considered a compensatory strategy to increase lateral stability, essentially widening the base of support to feel more secure. So these findings actually align very well with what we already know from the aging literature about how gait patterns shift over time. Number 4, stability was similar across groups. Here's where it gets really interesting. Even though we saw differences in walking speed and step length, dynamic stability at key gait events of touchdown or heel strike and liftoff or toe off was similar across both age groups and across dancers and non-dancers. So despite the fact that dancers moved differently, they weren't necessarily more or less stable during normal unperturbed walking. Their movement strategies were different, but their overall balance during steady walking ended up looking remarkably similar. And number 5, dancers generated forces differently. Now let's talk about kinetics, which is really just a fancy way of saying the forces involved in movement. In this study, dancers showed a higher rate of loading and greater peak propulsive force. Rate of loading refers to how quickly force is applied to the ground right after your foot makes contact, and peak propulsive force is how strongly you push forward during the push-off phase of walking. So what does that mean in plain terms? It suggests that dancers walk with more dynamic, forceful mechanics. And that actually makes a lot of sense when you think about ballet training, which emphasizes repetitive force production, explosive lower limb power, and very precise motor control. Importantly, these force differences likely contribute to the dancers' faster walking speeds, tying the kinetic findings directly back to their overall gait performance. So, what does all of this mean for older adults? I'd say one of the biggest takeaways from this study is that older recreational dancers walked faster and generated stronger propulsive forces than older non-dancers. That's meaningful because it suggests ballet may help support the maintenance of gait speed, lower limb power, and overall functional mobility as we age. However, and this is really important, this study examined unperturbed walking, meaning everyone was simply walking at their normal pace without any external challenges. During regular calm walking, stability looks similar across all the groups. But often the real differences show up when something unexpected happens. In my previous research, I've shown that dancers recover better from unexpected slips, adapt more quickly to repeated perturbations, and control their trunk motion more effectively. So ballet may not dramatically change stability during smooth, unchallenged walking, but it may improve how the body responds when something goes wrong, like a slip or a trip. And that's typically when falls actually occur. So why does this study matter? This was really the first time anyone had taken a comprehensive look at young professional dancers, older recreational dancers, and age-matched non-dancers all in the same study, and compared not just how they move, but how they produce force and control stability while walking. We examined kinematics, which are the movement patterns, kinetics, which are the forces involved, and dynamic stability, which tells us how balance is managed during motion. When you put all of that together, it gives us a much clearer picture of how long-term ballet training influences the way people walk across the lifespan. And honestly, it reinforces something pretty powerful. The neuromuscular adaptations developed in ballet don't just stay in the studio, they carry over into everyday movement. As always, no study is perfect, and this one has several important limitations to acknowledge. All of the walking trials were performed at a self-selected speed, which reflects natural movement, but limits our understanding of how dancers and non-dancers might respond under different pacing demands. We also did not collect any electromyography or muscle activity data, so we were unable to directly examine muscle activation patterns that may underlie the observed kinetic differences. Additionally, not all participants successfully contacted the force plates that were in the floor during our data collection process, reducing the sample size for some of our kinetic analyses. Future research should expand on this work by examining perturbed walking conditions, implementing standardized ballet intervention protocols, and using longitudinal designs to better understand how ballet training influences gait and balance over time. So here's what you should remember. Dancers walk faster, take longer steps, and generate greater propulsive forces than non-dancers. Despite these differences in speed and force production, dynamic stability during normal, unperturbed walking appears to be similar across ages and experience levels. Taken altogether, these findings suggest that ballet training may enhance force production and overall gait mechanics across the lifespan. And perhaps most importantly, movement matters. Even recreational ballet participation in older adulthood is associated with measurable biomechanical differences, reinforcing the idea that it is never too late for training to influence how the body moves. As a former professional dancer and now a biomechanics researcher, one of my goals is to bridge these two worlds. Ballet isn't just art, it's neuromuscular training, motor learning, and dynamic stability practice. Studies like this help us understand why ballet can be so powerful, not only for performance on stage, but also for lifelong mobility and function. Thank you again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Ballet Science Podcast.